Greetings, everyone. Greetings out there. This is your one and only Jean Dodier, who is a youth holistic life coach and motivational speaker from Arise Inspirations, empowering you to face the world. I'm trying to make a call on the other side, but yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. Today is an exciting day as we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic indeed, and I would like to welcome everyone out there who's joining us as we're still waiting for some people to gather around everybody, and let's have a conversation. Today we're going to be talking about Africa. We're going to be talking about Africa and looking into ways in which it can be united. Can Africa be united is our topic for today. Your host here is Jean Dodier Uwizeyimana, youth holistic life coach and motivational speaker from here at Arise Inspirations. And it's exciting. One of the things that we focus on here at Arise Inspirations is purely inspiration. What will inspire you to go out there and do something great with your life? What will inspire you to go out there and do something powerful with your life? So that is what we focus on here, and I hope that wherever you are, you'll find today's conversation very interesting and very powerful So while we're still waiting for our guests and everyone to gather around, please ask everyone around you, whoever you know, to be interested in the growth and in the future of Africa, to gather around the table. Let's have a conversation. Feel free to give comments, ask questions, and also to share this broadcast, as we are going to be sharing a lot in this conversation. And we'll be sharing here as we're waiting for our guest here. I'm using StreamYard, so onto Facebook, I can see exactly who's joining us. I'm sure, let's see if we can set that one to work in our favor. But please do give your thumbs up, give your love, and give your comments and question wherever needed as we continue. Today we're asking a question: can Africa be united? Can Africa be united? And it's a question that is on many people's minds today as we look at everything happening in the world, also considering the history of this country. Some call it a continent, where it's a country. Africa is a country, and that is what we're going to look. It's a continent, yes, but also a country, as it should be united. And there are so many people who argue in different ways. But today we're going to look at the possibility of uniting Africa, and we're going to see whether it is really possible or not, or what one can do, or if one should even put the effort into that at all. Our guest for today is none other than Maponga Joshua, Bishop Maponga Joshua. Still waiting for him to join the live stream, but you'll be able to learn a lot from him as we're going to be asking a lot of questions that pertains to Africa. Africa is something that is his passion, and he's been investing a lot into sharing the message, picking out the very concerning state of Africa, and speaking to human rights, speaking on issues that pertains Africa, its well-being and growth. So welcome everyone, welcome. I see people joining us. Just share some love and likes and thumbs up and comments, and let's gather around as we wait for our guest to arrive. Yes, and thank you so much for joining. So going to be sharing links with our guest to see how far he is to join us. But there is a great awakening. There is an awakening that is taking place in Africa. A lot of people are talking about Africa should unite. Africa should unite. Africa should unite. And it's not coming only from people on at ground level, but you also find different leaders, you know, talking about that and in questioning certain things that shows an interest into the unification of this continent. And there is so many questions. There are so many questions that one can ask. Personally, from a person who was born a refugee and going through different countries and seeing the state of Africa, and also looking at many things that have been happening on this continent, you know, one wonders, you know, why has these things not changed? Why has these things not changed? And one of the great things that we can ask is, for instance, like when we say that Africa received its independence, and we talk about independence, and then we look at independence in different countries. It came in different years, and we celebrate to this day that Africa indeed did receive independence. But when you go deeper, on a deeper level, and try to ask a question, is Africa really independent? Then we could ask, independent from who? When? How did that happen? Because as it would appear, it seems that some of our leaders still do report to these countries, and we receive aid from various powers out there that previously colonized Africa, and you find that they influence the ways in which our countries are run, and also into ways in which the continent is being is run in different spheres, in different areas. So one asks the questions: did we really get independence? Are we independent right now? If so, from who? Because are we not receiving aid from America? Are we not using the systems that were put into this continent by the colonial masters, for instance? You know, and when I mean the systems, I'm talking about the political system. You know, I'm talking about what they call democracy. We talk about democracy. There was corporatocracy, and now we're talking about technocracy. Everything that comes basically bombarding Africa, and we do not have a system of our own that we can be able to say that, okay, this is ours and it works for us. Another thing, for instance, borders. Borders were there and were put there by the colonial masters. They were put there for a reason. Basically, each one taking a part of Africa that they can own for themselves. And we know the history of that, how different countries in Africa, different parts of Africa went through colonialism and suffered a lot in those eras. But now, when we say we received the independence, why did we not remove the borders and say, no, we do not subscribe to the thought that we should be owned by any colonizer out there? We're independent, therefore we should be able to join forces and become one nation. Yeah. So these are the questions that we're going to be looking into and more. Please stick around and ensure that you invite your friends, probably your frenemies as well, as we're going to dig deep into this topic, trying to find out, can this be done? What can be done? Who can do what? And why? All right. Let me try to give a call to our guest again and see how he can be able to join us very quick. Please do bear with me as I make this call. Thank you. Yes. We are trying to connect. We are trying to connect with our guest to see how he can be able to join us very quick. Do bear with us, and we'll be on very soon. Yes. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. With me here is your host, Jean de Dieu Wizemana, youth holistic life coach and motivational speaker from Rise Inspirations, empowering you to face the world. We're all about inspiration and how we can be able to get from one level to another. Investing in our thinking, investing in our thoughts, investing into different ideas that really help us to basically to get better in life and be able to fight the good battle in this world we're living in. Okay, we'll be sending messages. I can see you there following, and thank you so much for joining us. Very soon we'll be joined by our guest and take it from there. Sebong, everyone, for joining the live conversation. We are having a conversation here talking about how can Africa be united. What are your thoughts on the unification of Africa? Can it be done? And those are the questions that we're going to be looking at. Unfortunately, I don't know what is happening. I'm trying to get hold of our guest here, and we're still waiting. Be joining us. But questions that are being raised is, can Africa be united? Can it be united? And where can one start from uniting Africa? We speak about different movements that are taking place in the world, talking about the very issue that concerning Africa. We're talking about the coronavirus. By the way, the coronavirus, you say coronavirus, COVID-19, and it's a virus that have taken the world and turned it upside down. Businesses are suffering, individuals losing jobs, and many afraid for their future, what to do. But in all of those things happening, people still argue out there, is this really a pandemic or it is a plandemic? When you talk about being a pandemic, they talk about how they are going to be testing, if it has already started in the process of testing different vaccines, talking about the vaccines that have to be tested in Africa. Why Africa and not somewhere else? Why is Africa always at the receiving end of decisions that are made by other people? And those are some of the questions that we need to look at as African people, and trying to have a conversation along those lines to say, in this ever-changing world, what kind of stand can we take as African people? And yeah, what are your thoughts? And please do leave a comment here. While you're still waiting, we can have a conversation. Those of you that are following, those of you that are joining us, and then we can take it from there. Greetings everyone out there. This is Jean Dodier here from Rise Inspirations. We're talking about, can Africa be united? Is the decolonization of Africa, decolonization and unification of Africa going to be part of the new normal? That's that we're asking today. And hello? Yes, how are you? Well, we are on air, we are live, and we're still waiting for you to join us. I have sent the link to your Facebook, so if you could please join us. Oh, I'm very sorry. No, it's perfect, sir. C'est bon. All right, that is our guest, and he got caught up in a lot of things. A very, very busy man, and we're going to conversation going. All right, let's see how we do that and take it from there. And thank you, by the way, for joining us. Just tell your friends. I mean, copy the link here and send it to everyone and tell them that we are alive and Africa is uniting and they should be part of this as well. All right, let's get excited about this and get the conversation going. Okay. Trying to copy the link and share. The technicalities of links, trying to get it going. We need to be happening, people. We need to be happening. And yeah. All right. Thank you for being patient with us, and we try to get this going. There are so many questions that we need to ask, and we do hope that you can you learn a lot, and also feel free to ask any questions, and we'll see how we can be able to respond to those. But this is a learning experience, getting to learn from someone who's an expert in this field, talking about Africa. He is everything about Africa. If you know the man that we talk about, Maponga Joshua, and the work that he does, and how he's been calling and educating people about different topics on Africa, you'll appreciate the experience that you're about to have right now, as you're going to be learning and also asking real questions about the possibility of this happening, and what does that mean to you? What does that mean to anyone who's living in Africa, or in Africa, an African who's abroad in the diaspora? So these are the questions that we're going to be. Can Africa be united? I keep repeating this. I think we're getting excited here. And let's get the conversation rolling. Let's get going. All right, I'm waiting for our guest to be able to join us. There he is going to be joining us, and we'll be taking it from there. Hello, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hello.
Kindly, sir. Hello.
Wonderful. Mzee, welcome to Rise Inspirations, and we have been waiting here with a lot of people, wondering about the question that we have raised about, can Africa be united? Can Africa be united? To those of you who are watching, Maponga Joshua Marara, Bishop Maponga, he is an author, an accomplished artist in his own right. And he is a speaker and an African thought leader. He is also the founder of the Farmers of Thought, and also the CEO. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yes, and Zay, you've been in this field for quite some time, talking about the Africa, raising different questions and also educating people about different things that an African should be thinking about, and talking against many injustices that are taking place in and on our continent, and today the question that is rising with everything that is happening in the world is that can really can decolonization really take, what is decolonization, if I could put it this way? What is decolonization, and how can it be done from an individual level for someone who's watching?
We must understand that maybe firstly, right on the program, to define colonization is to start right at the beginning, to find how one culture, how one group of people invades the territory of another and then subdue them. And when you have subdued them, you contaminate them, you pollute their culture, you pollute their education, you take away their land, you rewrite their history. And in the midst of doing all this, you almost, as it were, do what we might want to call as a mental conquering of now pushing them away from themselves. And you make a whole group of people to begin to migrate towards the culture that is dominant, which is the culture of the colonizer himself. And in this particular case, we are looking at the British colonies, we are looking at the Germans and the European people coming into Africa and causing those kind of changes amongst the people. And at the end of the day, when we begin to talk even issues of decolonization, is how do you undo the injustices of the past? And I know many people, once they talk about colonization, they just want to talk about politics, which for me is one of the least issues we must worry about. The colonization of the African must be fourfold. You are looking at the physical colonization. You are looking at the mental colonization. You are looking at the social colonization, and ultimately the spiritual colonization. So the idea is now, how do you begin to restore the African in all his forms, in all directions of his?
Yes, that is our guest there talking about the decolonization. The network. Yes, continue, sir.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Please do go on.
Are you there?
Yes, we can hear you.
Are you there?
Yes, sir. We can hear and see you.
My sound has disappeared.
But we can hear you. So okay, I see it's on again.
I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you now. Let me try and
try again. Try to see if you can unmute it from your device, sir. Oh, okay. He'll be joining us, but you understand that decolonization is not only about unifying Africa, but a personally, you need to be decolonized in all those 4 areas that he mentioned. So let's see if he can rejoin us again, and then we'll be able to continue our conversation right there. Okay, we're going to see the request again and then be able to take it from there. Can Africa be united? The question that our guest was answering is, what is decolonization and how does it take place? Yes, Mzee, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes, you are still explaining to us what is decolonization and how does that take place. Please continue.
And the most dangerous thing that could happen is when people are decolonized, is to fight one battle and then put your weapons away thinking that the battle has been won. And meanwhile, you are politically free, but you're running on the economic system of the colonizer. You are still eating the food of the colonizer. Your entertainment is still colonized. Your religion is still colonized. Your fashion is still colonized. Your culture is still colonized. So people tend to think that by the idea of freedom becomes that of sharing toilets together with the colonizer, then we're now free to enter the toilets where the white people used to be the only ones entering. That's a very cheap, artificial form of celebrating and even identifying the issues of freedom. Fundamentally so, it is to undo the injustices of the past in all their fraternities and killing the monster and allowing the African child to become themselves. Having said that, therefore, it must be emphasized that the African child is not free. Let's be agree, he is not free. Because the first commandment and the first law on the Freedom Charter is the freedom of allowing human beings to be themselves. So why can't an African child be themselves? Then we can say they are free. Right now, what we think is freedom, if you read the article that I wrote in the morning, is what we call political correctness, where people simply think that by having artificial peripheral forms of freedom, it is true freedom.
Yes, yes. So what we may call freedom is different and far from what freedom should be, because there is that there is a sense in which I see that freedom or success has been celebrated before it was really reached in a way. And while we still that having defined the decolonization is what is it that can an individual do to ensure that they themselves are decolonized from where they are, starting from on a personal level.
The process must be thorough. Since I've already given you the template on the 4 directions in which you are colonized, then you need to come back as an individual and say, how do I think? Am I free to think like an African? Number 2, how do I look? Am I free to look like an African? Number 3, how do I worship and pray? Am I free to worship and pray like an African? And number 4, how do I socialize? Can I socialize like an African? Now, that will speak totally from economics to total function of the African. That if you are supposed to begin a process of decolonizing yourself, the question is, do you have identity, personal identity, family identity, community identity, which ultimately must express itself in national identity? Do we have knowledge of self to an extent of being able and allow ourselves and that image to be?
Yes, that's very well put. And another question that a lot of people also going into the spirituality and Christianity, how I've heard people asking, why is in Africa in such a situation that we have found ourselves in? Talking about colonialism. Before that, there was slavery, and now we're having the continuation of that modernized, both slavery and the colonization. And one asks the question: where was God? Where is God in the process of all these things happening? And how does a person who is a believer, or let me say a Christian, approach this whole situation saying, is this the will of God that we should be in this situation? Or what is the will of God? What should we do to get ourselves into this? Looking at the spiritual aspect
so
of
maybe initially we needed to also to pick that idea of where was God, because we're asking that question posthumously when we are already coming from churches, when we are already believing and worshiping another God. So maybe those who go to church must ask the question to their God when they go to church and ask him, where were you? And if that God you find in church cannot answer that question, maybe he was never there. Because if that question must be answered, it has to do with identifying again and having a conversation around the African understanding of God and the European Western understanding of God. So that in the midst of us asking, where is God? If we forget where were we, What were we doing, and what is this God business all about? Is it about an address and having another human being elsewhere? Or is it in the improvement of the human being to reach the status of divinity? Therefore, the real question for me would not be where was God? I would want to ask the question, where were we? Where were our fathers? Where were our grandfathers? They were busy doing other things, and they did not notice that the monster that was coming onto the road had bigger intentions than what they had thought it would be like. So they were deceived. They were in isolation from the rest of the world. And the form of colonialism coming onto the place, I don't want us to place it on God. Then we move it away from personal responsibility. Slavery were Africans selling fellow slaves. Colonialism was African accepting and agreeing and allowing other people to colonize them. So the real question is, where were we? And the real question even today is, where are we? We are in the pubs, we are in the restaurants, we are in the churches, we are busy doing what we are doing. And while we are doing all the things, people are building banks, people are organizing political machinery, people are organizing guns, people are doing it. And while we are there, but we are absent, but yet we are present. So the issue is actually, those of you who are Christian, the real question for me will be the question of Genesis. When God comes in the garden and he asks Adam, where are you?
Where are you? And that is a question that we are being asked as African people, to say, where are you? Where are we? Now, there is a question that is like still bombards one's mind, to say, when it puts to question the very celebration that we do every year in different countries, talking about celebrating independence. A question that one could ask is, what independence? Independent from who? And we can see that some of the things that the colonial master put in place are still there. Political system, educational system, the borders themselves are still there. And to this day, our leaders still report to these countries and receive aid or instructions on how different things must happen. Now, I want to ask you the question now and say, looking at the way Africa is and the way countries are being run, because we celebrate, we say that unification of Africa, is it really possible? Is it really possible? And I ask this question looking at these different areas, because for so many years we are used to be run as we are being run, using the political parties, and our continent is divided in many different ways, divided into boxes called countries, and then in those countries we have political parties, and we also have a different ethnicity and different cultures. How possible is it to unite Africa, understand the decolonization process, but to unite Africa considering all these differences?
We can never celebrate African independence as countries. African independence must be celebrated as a continent. Because if we celebrate the independence of village monks and village presidents who are isolated into smaller little countries, America had 52 states, and they joined the 52 states to make the United States. Asia is united. Europe, they could be diverse in terms of their country, diverse in terms of their passports. But when you enter with your goods from Greece to Germany, right across the whole Europe, you actually have a united, which is all running under the euro dollar. So when you talk about African presidents, particularly African prime ministers, thinking that as countries, they are able to fight a continent, that is the first form of deception that we find, which eludes and evades the greater African leader, to think that he can compete with a continent, a country, to think that South Africa can actually sign a deal with China, to think that Angola can sign a deal with America, to think that Europe can sign a deal with Zimbabwe. See, we are able to be conquered because as countries, you can never be thinking that you can fight a continent as a country. China is able to invade into Africa on the basis of their continental muscle, not as a country. China is not a country. China is a continent. Asia is a continent. Europe is a continent. America is a continent. With that in mind, therefore, you need to understand that the currencies of the continent will always be more powerful than the currencies of countries. And our leaders don't have understanding. They understand it physically that you cannot take an Uno, you cannot take a truck, a 16-wheel truck, and put it in an Uno. Yeah. But you can take an Uno and put it in a truck. The idea of an African president to think that he can take a whole truck and put it in his boot, that's the greatest illusion that we have. And when an elephant signs a deal with a mouse to share a room, you can use your common sense to find out who will end up asking for space in that room.
Yeah. Now, there is a lot of things happening, of course. With I understand that it's like putting a lightweight champion with a heavyweight champion in the same ring. One of those is committing suicide. But now, having said this, what is it being done? What is being done? I noticed that during this whole corona pandemic taking place, which is also to be questioned in many ways. I was asking the viewers just a while back that is this pandemic or it is a pandemic? Is also another question that I need to look at. But all that happening, there seems to be an awakening taking place. An awakening taking place done by people like you who are every day out there talking about decolonization, unification of Africa, and the reasons why. But now, during this time, there also seems to be like a great sense of in African people saying, we are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we would like to see Africa unite. But we understand that from a ground level. But is there something being done on a leadership level to say that this unification of Africa can really happen from our leaders' perspective?
We have fake organizations such as SADC, such as African Union, and many other form of African fake unity, which gives the African leaders some form of sense territorial advantage among themselves. But you know very well, African Union has been alive for the longest. We have never seen African Union assisting Zimbabwe during the battle. We never saw African Union coming into South Africa with soldiers to liberate Africa. We have never seen African Union going to Congo and allowing Congo to be liberated. We have not seen African Union walking out to Angola and putting stability in those areas. Wars are being fought in Africa when we have African Union in place. So first, we need to be very clear and not get ourselves deceived to think that the gathering of African leaders brings any change. The one who gives them the funding to gather determines the agenda of the meeting. We have not been able to change the agenda of the financier and the financier person who is paying the money. The African Union building is built by the Chinese, and apparently it is bugged as we speak right now. All the information is there. It is being served in Shanghai, in an African building at that level. So that when you begin to understand that until we have a clearer picture of what are we doing, actually what me and you are doing right now is the real deal. Because we don't have bread in our mouths. We have freedom to speak. Many of our leaders cannot say anything because their mouths are full of Western and colonial bread.
Sorry. Looking at all these things happening, I know this is a movement that have been there for a very long time, for many decades going back. We're talking about people who started the very idea of unification of Africa. We talk about leaders like we talk about leaders like Patrice Lumumba, who was for the unification of Africa, and we also look at Kwame Nkrumah, who started the very movement of unification of Africa. We go to Tanzania, your Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. Malawi, we look at Kamuzu Banda, Samora Machel in Mozambique, and so forth. These are the people who have been, trying to find ways in which Africa, through which Africa can be unified. And we see also people like your Thomas Sankaras. We see also your Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, and all of these people were for this idea. Now we're talking about unification of Africa. What is it that we are doing that will ensure that we have success where these previous leaders have failed?
The management of the system is based on a European system. Let me cut to the chase. There's nothing we will do as African leaders until we are prepared to change the constitution, the legal framework in which our democracy must function. Many of our Pan-African organizations, they think that opening an African Pan-African organization will change anything. You put the same leaders in power as long as the bus they're driving is a colonial legislative framework. There is very little impact that will happen in that regard. Because it is the law that governs the people. And the law that is governing Africa right now is a foreign law. So even when you sit around America, the Africa Union, the laws of parliament that they're using there are European laws. Where are the kings in African Union? Where are the traditional leaders in African Union? Where are the indigenous healers in African Union? Where are the indigenous African games in that Africa Union? Where is the fashion of Africa in Africa Union? You have a group of educated people who now understand the Western system, and all they're trying to do is just duplicate and photocopy the system so that it can work. People are actually thinking of the United States of Africa. I beg to differ. I'm talking about the United Kingdoms of Africa. Because as long as we are still talking the concept of states, we are still in a democratization of Africa, and democratization of Africa simply means using colonial systems in an African indigenous way. You are trying to solve square problems with round poles. It will not work.
So it's not about countries, it's about kingdoms, you say. Now, within those kingdoms that you're talking about, of course, Africa, I understand that it's divided in different kingdoms, depending on which area of Africa we're looking at, the north, the south, the east, and west. Now, you have been doing a great work and also talking to different leaders and different kings in different parts of Africa. And also, as a founder and CEO of Farmers of Thought, understand also that there is a movement called AIM that was born out of that. Could you take us through a bit on what is AIM doing, and what are its aims, and what is it aims to accomplish?
I decided through AIM and Farmers of Thought to take the longer route, which is a much more tiresome route than the short route of setting up organizations. We are AIM. We are now also going to be involved in terms of liberation of the African people. The idea and the agenda that I decided to design under AIM was to start off with the software transformation, changing the thinking and the mindset of the African child, and allowing that thinking to be taught on a wider, broad-based to the entire African children, so that by the time we are organizing a transformation strategy for the continent, we have that common understanding, because we would have been able to kill the bacteria of fake colonization that is amongst us. Because right now, if immediately you say we have an organization, the first question that are coming in there, who is the president? Who is the secretary? Now, who is the treasurer? And there we are, falling exactly in the same trap again of thinking that to transform Africa, you are going to do what I call individual isolation of a hero. So you talk about South African liberation, you want to mention Mandela. You talk about Zimbabwe, you want to mention Mugabe. You talk about Zambia, you want to talk about Kenneth Kaunda. And once you isolate a leader away from the people, there is this hero worshipping mischief where the leader can be manipulated as an individual. And the manipulation of an individual results in a recolonization of the entire people against the principles of their own liberation. We went to war looking for land. South Africa is free right now. Do we have land? Big answer for you. Don't even want to answer. No. Why? Because the Constitution says on section 25, you can only do it like this, like this, like this. So in AIM, we've decided firstly to train the first 3,000 farmers of thought in terms of the thinking process. The software is farmers of thought, but building it, once we have the farmers of thought, we move them into the AIM platform as farmers of thought. Each one must train one. Each one must develop the other. So the 3,000 that we hope to have gathered together, they must all go back and train another 100 each. We hope to have another 30,000. From 30,000, they must develop 100 each. That must give us the 3 million. By the time we hit the third level, we should already be talking about 1.2 billion and beyond. So firstly, it is to transform the thinking of the African with a simple tool that I've designed called Thinking Tool, which allows you to ask the physical questions, which I mentioned at the beginning in terms of the colonial structure, which with the tool which will ask the physical dimensions of the African child, the spiritual dimensions of the African child, the industrial, which you might call the mental functions of the child, and ultimately, how do we then as Africans socialize with the rest of the world? It's a big dream. I hope I'll achieve it in my lifetime. But ultimately, from that bigger body of the 3 billion Africans now having one understanding, they must be asked the question, a democratic question. How do we move from here? How do you want to govern yourself from here? How do you want to become yourself from here? The distance which we have lost between the past and the present and the future we want to achieve is so vast. It took colonialism 400 years to bring us here. The question is, how many years is the African leader prepared to prepare his people to fight the monster, which is 400 years old?
So you are saying that in order for us to unify Africa, we need to move away from the very foreign thinking of saying we have to structure ourselves differently, totally differently, whereby we do not isolate one individual as a leader. So thank you very much for that, and to give us a light on that. But having said that, I understand that it's a very great work that it also involves in other leaders who are maybe talking about the very thing of uniting Africa. Is there anything that M is doing to ensure that other organizations also that aim to achieve the same purpose of unifying Africa are working with you and bringing first together people of similar thinking to ensure that the work is fastened or in that way?
As I've already mentioned, uniting with other Pan-African organizations right now simply means the unification of constitutions. And most of those constitutions, I am not in agreement with them, because the DNA of those constitutions is actually a colonial constitution that is just written in indigenous knowledge and indigenous languages. And having said that, therefore, you may find that we can find many other ideologies that are there. There are 1,500 African organizations that are floating out there. And some of them, we may find areas of common interest. But I wanted to allow AIM to grow organically, so that by the time people are coming into the organization, we necessarily don't have to wait in terms of trying to re-educate them and introducing them to the greater fundamental principles of AIM. And I strongly that ultimately AIM will attract all Pan-African organizations. Some of them which are already military and militant in their direction, they must be allowed to implement the military wing. Some of them who have economy as their driving force, they will drive the economy. But in the midst of driving military, in the midst of driving the economy, the question is, are you using indigenous knowledge systems of how to develop those economies? China is succeeding, not because it's a Christian country, but because they have a central thinking, a central mindset. Europe is growing, not because they are better than us, but they have one common understanding. The European is better than the African. Their sense of supremacy gives them the bullying idea Now, I want to bring up an idea that says the African is more royal than all of you. Let me see who will walk into the room and stand when talking to a king. But because the African has been reduced to a slave and a servant, reduced to a population, reduced to a small little piece of cloth we call a flag, we think that by sitting around a flag, we will have the freedom that we need. It has proved wrong from 1960, from Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana to South Africa here 25 years ago. We are still trying to define a simple word called democracy. With democracy, we are still finding ourselves in a worse state than we were, in some certain cases, worse than we were during colonialism.
Now, as we grow towards the close, we have taken very much time, but we're getting a lot of information here with what AIM is doing, and also you're saying that you do not want to join others because it will be there's a lot of constitutions, but there could be someone out there who says, I really would like to do something, because I understand that some although we say there's no isolation of one leader, but someone may say, okay, I am a very busy individual, I would like to support this idea. How can people be able to be part of AIM or try to be able to join you, those who are willing? If someone who wants to join you in any way at all, how can they be able to do that?
I will not take shortcuts, and I'm not in a hurry to be just getting people to fill up an organization. We want really committed people, people who are prepared to have their minds transformed. How to join the organization, I'll give you information after the show. It is people must go through the training process of our AIM organization, align their thinking first with a great organization. I'm not here to be collecting monies from people and simply collecting numbers from people. We are really looking at the process of how do we change the entire continent and beyond. Therefore, to join it is easy. To join AIM, go through the necessary training program, identify the 7 pillars of AIM, bring your skills with you, marshal yourself behind one pillar, will give you the software of how to do agriculture as Africans, how to do business as Africans, how to do politics as Africans, and how to convert our culture into an economy of its own. And with that in mind, I hope that the greater African child, without changing you from your culture, without moving you away from your political inclination, we all can come together under a common wave and move away from this Francophone, Anglo-Saxophone, and Luxophone kind of thinking into a common goal. What is the idea of the African child? Commonality of language, commonality of military bases, commonality of financial spaces, commonality of education. And so the African child can have one DNA. What helps America to run? It's a common American dream. My question is, do we have a single-minded African dream through which we can marshal the entire African continent towards that common goal, to sharpen that understanding so that we can have that idea of piercing through the greater walls of colonialism? It's a work of a lifetime. But from where we are sitting, we needed to find out how do we agree right now, those who are in French, in the British, and in the Germans, etc., into a common understanding. Therefore, to join AIM, it's easy. You'll have all the information to share with your viewers. We are looking for soldiers who are prepared to get to battle and fight not only the physical battle, but even the mental, the spiritual, and the social battle that is facing us. Then we can begin to decolonize and deconstruct the African paradigm and the African prison.
Thank you very much, Mzee Maponga Joshua, for sharing with us this information right here. And the question we've been asking from the beginning was, can Africa be united? And is the decolonization and unification of Africa the new, or part of the new normal? Dear followers, you have heard it for yourself. What is happening in Africa as far as unification and decolonization of Africa is concerned, and you have heard the work of AIM that is taking place. Those of you who would like to join will be able to share information with you. But Mzee, finally, your closing remarks, Mzee, if there is anything that you'd like to say in closure.
In closure, we are going to be releasing a business model under AIM and Farmers of Thought, where we are not asking for much. but we want to set up a mini sort of insurance and life cover policy. And the great amount of that money will now be put together in terms of creating a financial base and petitions that are going to be going out to be signed up, aligning. You need, first of all, to be an AIM and a Farmers of Thought member to be able to join the group in terms of having business networks around the greater African continent. We want to develop, firstly, the business. After we develop the business, we then develop the political machinery. From the political machinery, we will build the legal framework. From the legal framework, the propaganda space, which is media. So we are well thought through in terms of how we're going to approach this monster. That's how colonialism was built. And that's how we can deconstruct it and build our Africa that we need. Over and above that, we're encouraging every member to build a homestead, invest in your own village, buy your cattle, buy your cows, buy your goats, rebuild your mother's home back in the village. Take some of your money from the colonial masters and invest it back in the village in assets and business that are able to grow without manipulations of the JSEs, manipulations of the financial systems of the land. You don't have money in the bank. Your money must be found in raw material and raw assets, which continuously grow. Then we know the difference between money and wealth. The African child is wealthy because of the resources that they have. We need to start beneficiating our land, our minerals, our resources, our water, and our air, and convert them into business. The international community, when it comes to us, it finds a united group of people who know their true worth and their true value. And ultimately, it is to push away the political leaders who are sitting in big offices with big fat stomachs, and they don't know what to do with the votes that we have given them, but to manipulate the economies of their own countries into their own personal businesses.
Thank you, Mzee Maponga, for sharing with us. Dear followers and out there, you have heard it for yourself, the work that is being done to unite Africa. So the question, I hope you would agree with us that we've done justice to the question, answering the question, can Africa be united? And also, is the unification, decolonization and unification of Africa going to be part of the new normal? And the answer is a double yes. So gather around, prepare yourself to be able to join. You have heard from Mzee Maponga that there is a petition that is going around to be signed. For those of you that want to sign the petition, you want to stand and be counted as someone who wants Africa to unite, you can raise your hand and say, yes, indeed, I would love to do that. And for those who would love to be members of M, there will also be a way, I believe, onto that petition as well, a link where you can be able to go through and then be able to take it from there.
And just a quick one, last one also I can share with you, is that yes, every country will have an opportunity of having an AIM office. So South Africa will have AIM, Azania Indigenous Movement, Botswana, BIM, Botswana Indigenous Movement, Angola, AIM, Angola Indigenous Movement, Nigeria, NIM, Kenya, KIM, so that all these national offices are then aligned to the AIM, and we can drive from a domestic policy to a continental policy. Then we can begin to talk about a world policy and international policy of how Africa interacts with the rest of the world.
That is very well put. You understand that the process is a well thought through process that is already underway. Things are already happening. So we need to, those of you that are interested, find a way to be able to do something, because in a situation where we are forced to panic, in a situation where we have been downtrodden as African people, it's about time one does something. We need to do something, and the process has already begun. So you will see the link. We'll be able to share the link in the comments here in the comment section, and you'll be able to follow the link and find your way to the being part of the process of the unification of Africa. So
and every afternoon we run the afternoon drive at 4:15 in the afternoon every day. Please come through and acclimatize yourself with the information that we are sharing there.
Perfect. Maponga, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and we really appreciate your presence and your time and the information that you have shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank
Awesome. From Arise Inspirations, we are so thankful for you viewers out there who've been able to join us, and I hope this has been very informative. Hope we've done justice to the topic that we shared with you. Please leave the comments below on what you think about it, about the conversation that we just had, and share with everyone whom you think that may be able to benefit from this. From Rise Inspirations, we are committed to bring you inspiring content that will help you go through these tough times. We give you content that will help you solve really problems in your life and also find solutions for different challenges. Your host here, John J. Wizimana from Rise Inspiration, empowering you to face the world, saying very, thank you very much for joining us. See you next time.